Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another InfoSec operator tutorial. In today's tutorial, we are going to be learning how to change both our private IP addresses as well as our public IP addresses. So stay tuned and thanks for watching. Alright guys, in order to change our IP address, our private IP address, if each of you remember from my last networking tutorial, there are two different types of IP addresses. There are your private IP address on your Wi-Fi and then your public IP address after it runs through the router. In order to change the private IP address, we actually have two different ways, and that's what I'm going to show each of you right now. The first way is we can actually go into our search bar down here and go to our settings. We can open our settings and go into network and internet. And we want to open that up. And then on your Wi-Fi here, I'm using Comcast, but on your Wi-Fi here, we go under properties. And we want to be able to, kind of change our IP, right? So right now it's under a automatic DHCP, which we'll get into network protocols a little bit later down the road, but we want to edit that and change it to manual, and we just want to do IPv4 because IPv6 really doesn't work too well with many different technologies right now because it's not in full effect at the moment. So with that being said, we go and we put in a private IP address, which could be either 10.0.x.x. And since we're on one singular network, this would actually still be 0. And then our host number could be literally anything from, I believe, 1 to 255, if I'm not mistaken. And so you can put that in, or we could do a 192.168.0.1 to 255 if I'm not mistaken. But you don't add the dash in because that's not going to work. So you can pick a number 1 to 255. Okay. So I'm going to delete that though. Subnet prefix length is probably so it depends on how many devices you have on your network, but you can put up to 24. Would be very overly sufficient for what we're doing here. Your gateway, if you're not sure of what your gateway IP is, all you need to do is go into the command prompt. I prefer to run as administrator, but either way this works for what you need. And we would just do that IP, wrong thing here. Okay, IP config, and you can find out what your default gateway would be. Mine is 10.0.0.1, and you would put that information in here. Preferred DNS, you can actually leave that out of this list here because you should have already a DNS IP through your internet service provider. And if you leave it blank, it's going to autofill for you. So you don't even have to try to sort through that. Okay, then you would just hit save and it would make changes. You may have to restart the computer, not sure. And the reason why I'm not doing it right now is because I do not want to screw with this video and have to restart everything. The next part we're going to take a look at, you can just go through the control panel. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that now. Alright guys, option number 2 here is to go through the control panel, and I honestly find this option a little bit easier to manage and understand. Go through your control panel, which you just, you open your search, and then if you want, type in control panel if it's not on the front page of the search. Then here we got our network and internet, view network status and tasks. So just click on that. Here it shows your active networks, and we'll get later into set up a new connection or network within our network, but right now we're just going to focus on changing the IP. Over here to the right, we got this access type, internet and connections. Wi-Fi 2, mine is labeled, my SSID is labeled 1455. And then we want to go into our properties. Okay, and we're going to scroll down and we see here we got our IP version 4. Again, that's the one we really want to focus on. We're not really using IPv6, but if you want to mess around with that, you can. It's basically doing the same thing. Just it's version 6 instead of version 4. But we go under properties, and then we would select use the following IP address. Okay, this one is a little bit different because down here we actually can't use the automatic DNS. So you would have to be able to realize what your DNS is. And honestly, I do not know what my DNS is. So we're not going to go through with that. But we can go with the IP address, the subnet mask, and the default gateway. Again, your subnet mask should typically be 255.255.255.0. So I'll go ahead and fill that in for you, each of you. 255.255.255.0. The IP address, again, same thing as the first time. It could be anything like 10.0.0.1 through 255. So actually, it can't be 1 because that's your default. So I actually made an error there. It could be 2 through 255. Your default gateway is actually the 10.0.0.1. So ignore what I said that first time, and it would have to be 2 to 255. Default gateway for me is 10.0.0.1. That's the default gateway. Then you would actually have to look up your preferred DNS server and all that fun stuff, okay? So that's the two different ways you can change your private IP address. I'm going to cancel that, cancel this, close that, and exit out of here. And now let's go ahead and look at changing your public IP address. Alright guys, so as we see here, I have a VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network, set up. This changes my public-facing IP to the IP that each of you see up here. Okay, in this area, it won't let me highlight, but you know, the 172.98.93.227. This is a VPN apparently out of New York, and that's just, you know, the way you can change your public-facing IP. Another way would be to use a proxy, or when you're using the internet, you can use Tor. Now, some of this here has very strong VPN options where, say, I got Hong Kong here. It uses both the Tor network and Tor nodes as well as peer-to-peer connectivity. And we'll go over that again later down the road once we start understanding protocols and how networks are designed and everything. More network engineering, if you will. But essentially, that you need to know, if you get into a VPN, you can change your public-facing IP as well as using a proxy server. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that, well, VPNs don't work because they're still tracking you on those VPN. They still got the logs. And in some cases, that is true. But Proton VPN is based out of Switzerland. So it does not abide by US laws. It has complete 100% anonymity. Otherwise, I would not have spent the money on that VPN. As for proxy servers, some of those could be tapped into, but you use a proxy server plus the Tor network, and it really starts confusing those who are tracking the network as to who actually is using it. So essentially, if you're using multiple layers in a really good VPN like Proton VPN, each of you can still evade being tracked, if you will. And also, and this is kind of off topic, but if each of you use something like Tails operating system, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it's a form of Debian based Linux. Don't quote me on that because I'm not sure, but I think it is Debian based Linux. You can use that in addition to everything I just told each of you, and you'll basically become 100% anonymous. Unless you have like both the NSA and CIA coming after you for some kind of reason, for a very specific, like, you hacked a multi-million-dollar bank. I really don't think that they're actually going to be able to track you using that stuff. I do have to do a little bit more research, but if Ed Snowden and some other anonymous hackers are using it, I'm pretty sure you're okay. So that's kind of how you change your public IP address. And also, there, I think, is a way to change your router's public IP address, but you have to have like some kind of certificate or some crap through your internet service provider. If you're good at hardware, then you're good to go on that, but I am literally no good at hardware, computer hardware. So this is the way that you can do it and become safe online for your public IP address. Again, your private IP address does not matter because unless they attack the router, nobody's ever going to be able to tap into a private IP address, or unless they're on the same network. So guys, thank you for watching. Hopefully this helped each of you a little bit more with networking. In the next networking tutorial, we're going to be going over like ports, protocols, things of that nature, so that way we know what we're looking at when we're attacking different systems. Thanks for watching, and please do subscribe.